Arcane Season 2 is finally here, and it's great. Really great. So great, in fact, I watched it 5 times. Dissecting every little moment, finding every little background Easter egg I could, all the symbolism and foreshadowing and everything. It's so multi-layered, it's insane. So that's what I want to share with you fellas today. This is well over 200 hidden details I found in Arcane Season 2, Act 1. Episode 1 starts us right where we left off with Mel's golden glow. While almost everyone else is gravely injured or deceased, Jace, Mel, and even Mel's section of the council room are completely unscathed. Possible explanations include Sonya's hourglass, an item from League of Legends, making the user invulnerable for a few seconds, and we've been shown the Medardas do love collecting priceless artifacts. Solari armor, the golden armor on Mel's back resembles that of the same Targonian tribe, and the item, Locket of the Iron Solari, does provide a giant shield in an area around the user. And lastly, Chosen of the Wolf, well, technically Kindred, a champion from League of Legends that is essentially the Grim Reaper, has an ultimate move that prevents any living being from dying in a circle. Victor was keeping plenty of notes: the greenery that died when he tested the hex core on it, the transformation's effect on his leg, identifying potential locations on his body for rune engravings, and of course, how could I forget, he colors his notes. He also becomes a spooky skeleton for a couple frames. Onto the opening theme song, and it's still Enemy by Imagine Dragons. This is also your reminder that Imagine Dragons are canon in Runeterra. Victor's scene in the intro here not only foreshadows his new fashion attire, but struggling to put on the mask symbolizes his changing understanding of his new identity, and also because the League's counterpart is pretty famous for wearing a mask. Vi and Caitlyn love each other, but will eventually butt heads on morality and ethos as the act goes on, and in the intro they literally butt heads. Ambessa is holding a black rose, a teaser for the secret Noxian Cabal's later appearance. Caitlyn's shadow weirdly bears a resemblance to Sauron from Lord of the Rings. You could say this is literal foreshadowing of Caitlyn's descent into hatred. Echo, especially in League of Legends, is known for his ability to travel slightly back in time, hence his shadow mimicking a ticking clock, and this moment where his footage slightly rewinds. There's some Mel imagery as well, her replacing her mother, and the shadows of the black rose that will eventually kidnap her. Jace being blinded, both as a nod to the blinding white light of the mutated hex core, but also because Jace's dream has become blindsided. And lastly, Jinx holding up a flag, symbolizing how she is about to become a symbol for the people of Zaun. The artistry of this funeral scene is just an absolute marvel. The black and white style, fully hand-drawn in charcoal with line work simulating paint markings dribbling down the canvas, it really invokes that element of sadness. And as we learn later on, Cassandra Kiraman, Vi, and Jinx are the only people on Caitlyn's mind right now, hence why her mother and Vi are the only people unblurred and fully colored in this scene. The flower encased in glass is the same one seen in the Petals of Remembrance icon released onto the PvE test server mere days before the Season 2 premiere. The flower petals here are meant to represent Caitlyn's purity. Dropping it into the casket and having it taken away, she is forced to give up a piece of herself and have it be locked away forever. Vi looks up to see a giant hole in the Piltover Counselor building, and Loss, being represented by a giant hole that cannot be filled, comes back at the end of this episode and at the end of the act. Counselor Sallow, now crippled from the waist down, is chauffeured around by Ambessa in his new wheelchair. Ambessa is manipulating him behind the scenes, but if you'd seen her in-game interactions with other League of Legends champions, you'd also know that he is her type. I always forget Counselor Shula's name, so I just call her Evelyn, since the two share the same voice actress. That teacup is suspiciously similar to the one seen in Caitlyn's recall animation, isn't it? The letters of condolence Caitlyn reads through are all marked with the insignias of the respective houses they came from. For example, we later learn that this is Counselor Sallow's, whose letter she picks up and doesn't even open. The final letter contains her invitational badge to the upcoming memorial, which we see adorned by the under attendees on their way to and at the ceremony. Tobias Kierman, the man known for never saying anything even remotely mean, is likely the one who first plants the seed of Zaunite hatred in Caitlyn after he dismisses Vi.
What is she still doing here? What is she doing here?
Rain on the outside of the building, black on the inside of the building. At the same moment, both Vi and Caitlyn leave each other again. Oil and water, baby. Vi's hesitation to join the Enforcers and her relationship with them will be a pivotal part of her character arc this season, considering her old League counterpart is an Enforcer, ironically and unfortunately famous for her police brutality. Jace explains to Mel that the runic patterns in Victor's system are changing faster than he can keep up, and that would explain why the illustrations on the chalkboard rarely resemble the pre-established rune designs we've seen so far. As for the triple question marks, well, they're there to remind people like Necrit that they just wasted 30 minutes of their life looking for non-existent Easter eggs on a chalkboard. Actually, I lied. The French word for heart is cœur. And as you can clearly see in Jace's diagram, the hex core has taken the place of Victor's heart. We see Jace manage to retrieve one of the Atlas gauntlets from Jinx's goodbye party, but curiously, it is missing a finger. I wonder what that could be foreshadowing.
How'd it go with the council?
My mother's entered the game.
Which one? This shot here is almost a direct recreation of Kate's marksman practice flashback from season 1. Remember when I said the flower petals symbolized a part of who Caitlyn was, her purity? In her daydream, the flower petals lose their vibrancy, turning to black as they get closer to Jinx. Did you ever notice just how much vibrancy her bright blue hair loses as the act goes on? The wind chime here could be a reference to Janna. With its spiraling gold, it would be similar to Eloar's incarnation of her, and it would mean there is at least one Janna cameo per episode of this act. The wind speed changes here to signify Caitlyn's emotions. Steady but building winds for the sadness of her mother's passing, violent winds for the hatred she feels towards Jinx, and finally slowing down for Vi, as for this episode at least, she is Kate's emotional rock. Junior Officer Maddie Nolan is in fact not Marcus's daughter, unless Ren somehow managed to change her name and age 10 years in the span of a couple days. Junior Officer Steb doesn't speak a single line of dialogue, nor is he referred to by his name a single time in these 3 episodes, though Singed is not referred to by his name a single time in 12 episodes now. Liquor brandings, we got some Shuriman booze, Piltoven brand beer, and an actual Faker reference. Trying to sway Vi back over to their side, Maddie tells her how Caitlyn boasted about Vi's good heart. That is probably what tipped her over the edge, because it's the exact same thing Vander said about her.
You've got a good heart. Don't ever lose it.
However, Maddie also tells Vi
it's nice to know there's still good ones left.
that has a bit of a double meaning. Both that not all enforcers are corrupt, but because this scene is shot with Maddie looking down on Vi, casting a shadow on her, it is symbolic of the systematic hatred Piltovans feel towards the Zonites. Speaking of racism, we can see multiple banners of the Demacian king Jarvan IV, and we later learn that these are simply advertisements for a play. The crowd at the ceremony contains some of the same house leaders that we'll see at the end of episode 3. Amara, the trade merchant from Act 2, Season 1, shows up again, and what might be the deceased counselor Bulbach's wife? Speaking of Bulbach, we do get the full names of the deceased counselors. We already knew about Cassandra Kierman, but now we have Tormund Hoskell and Irius Bulbach. Kember and Rennie makes a special reappearance, and her invite appears to have given her full unrestricted access, hence why she wasn't checked down like the other guests. Rennie's henchman also seals the exit door, preventing the enforcers from escaping, and is also the one to sneak to the front of the crowd to deliver her weapon. Vi can see through the henchman's disguise because of the tattoo on his neck. Even though we didn't get to properly see it last season, Vi was one of the few people who raided Rennie's factory, and Rennie herself has the exact same insignia on her neck. The weapon Rennie uses bears a striking resemblance to the League of Legends item, Chempunk Chainsword. Hypothetically, if this was a League of Legends game, Rennie probably would have been reported for rushing an anti-heal item against 3 champions who don't have any natural healing. It is highly suspect Mel doesn't just die here. I know it's a flare gun, but that guy could have definitely just shot her in the face, and that would have been one less council member. I wonder why Mel was able to get out of this situation so scot-free. The Turbo Chemtech minions also return from Season 1, again as assets to Rennie's arsenal and based on the now retired League of Legends item, and just like the item's active effect, these guys can move around really fast. When one of Rennie's tubes gets disconnected Bane style, we the viewers are hit with multiple flashes of light, and Rennie's eye becomes bloodshot, indicating the primary function for these tubes might just be for vision. I guess because glasses are too uncool for chem barons. Actual visible drops of blood from Jace here, and we later see he does wrap himself up in bandages to cover both of the injuries.
Here's Johnny!
That hammer is also the exact same one that Jace used to demonstrate the stability of the new Hextech gemstones back in Act 2 of Season 1. This is Officer Harold, the same guy who was seen patrolling the Academy halls in Season 1, meaning he has been guarding these hallways for a minimum of 7 years. This shot of Rennie slowly overlapping Cassandra's statue could be a hint to how much like Cassandra, Rennie is going to die, but honestly I think it's just a fun nod to how both characters share the same voice actress. You ever notice how Vi managed to retrieve Jace's hammer from his workshop but makes zero mention of the Cocoon Victor when there's no possible way she wouldn't have seen him? The floor in this scene is made of ice, because I have no other way to describe how this Chemtech soldier spends a solid 25 seconds full sprinting at a group of people pre-established to be hardly 5 feet in front of him. You'll notice Caitlyn shoots the Chemtank soldier in the exact same spot 7 times, cause she doesn't miss. Rickness, who he's Ambassador's second in command, his glaive appears to have Canic Rookerns wrapped around it, a League of Legends item predominantly known for its high amount of magic resistance.
What kind of animals?
Your people hunt us.
like animals.
The Kierman house holds a globe with the Fleet Feather tracker from Legends of Runeterra adorned on top of it, as well as a ballet dancer painting, one of many things hinting at a future Oriana appearance. The three paintings side by side could be the family history of the Kierman household, but judging by how the woman in the portrait gets progressively older with each painting, and the first one being from Ionia, where Tobias might have been born, this is probably a visual history of Cassandra Kierman. There's a raptor head mounted on the wall, a reference to one of the League of Legends jungle camps. Not the first time this has happened, and definitely not the last. There are butterfly paintings all over Caitlyn's house, and one large purple one in her room. Butterfly imagery will come back later on and acts as a metaphor for the massive amount of emotional and physical changes many of our main characters are going through. Just like a caterpillar metamorphosizing into a butterfly, it's no coincidence Victor is currently held in a cocoon. Victor's ability to use the metal around him via telekinesis is first teased here using the spoon in Jace's Man of Tomorrow mug. Computers, at least very primitive steampunk-inspired ones, keyboard and all, now canonically exist in Runeterra. With modern knowledge of what the Grey even is in the Arcane universe, these illustrations are the Grey infesting Zaun, the effects the Grey is having on Zaunites, particularly within the lungs, gas masks and protective gear to ensure the safety of the Piltovans constructing the Kierman's new ventilation systems, Cassandra Kierman actually opening up the new ventilation systems to the public, and the demonic eyes in the fog are actually just the headlights of the enforcers who move through them, as we see Caitlyn and crew do so in episode 2. A somber rendition of Heavy as the Crown plays here. This Linkin Park song first debuted this year as the 2024 League of Legends World Championship anthem, and it works better in this context than as a Worlds theme. Yeah, I said it. Practically spelling out for us Caitlyn's new role as leader of House Kierman and the burden that comes with those responsibilities. As the counselors contemplate how the memorial attack even happened, the camera pans over to M-Bessa right as Mel says,
They must have had help from someone up here.
I wonder who it could possibly be. Jace pauses for a brief moment. The Atlas gauntlets were a tool. Even his hammer has some practical uses, as we'll see later on. But he's making a Hex Tech gun. He knows he has broken his promise to Victor and their shared dream by making a Hex Tech weapon. Caitlyn got a pretty big wardrobe change, and while most could deduce it's akin to her new Arcane Commander skin minus the cape, what you might not have noticed is that she swapped out her once blue necklace for a red one. Kinda like Noxus. Like I said, she doesn't have the cape from the Arcane Commander skin, but she also doesn't have the same Hex Tech rifle. This one is more closely based on her official League of Legends design. While Vi's Enforcer outfit looks infinitely less ridiculous than her League of Legends counterpart, but it did keep the cropped miniskirt. Episode 1 ends with an epilogue, or rather a flashback of Singed attempting to capture a Merkwolf. Notice the sprung trap and blood trail leading back to their den. A fun detail is knowing this wolf is going to be used to create the champion Warwick, and one of his most famous abilities is following a blood trail. Merkwolves are also yet another reference to a League of Legends jungle camp, but also are native in Runeterra to the frozen north of the Freljord. The long travel time for Singed to get from Piltover to the Freljord wouldn't matter because this scene is actually taking place in the past. Everybody and their mother knows Vander will be turned into Warwick, and in the 6 to 7 years since his passing, his corpse would have withered away by now, unless Singed was going through extraordinary methods to keep it alive. The tune of a music box can be heard in the background, and that's something the champion Oriana is famous for, only validating the theory that Singed has been retconned into her father. Episode 2
Watch it all burn.
opens with Jinx and a dead Silco submerged in water, calling back to her, well, basically baptism of Season 1. Though instead of letting go of Powder metaphorically killing her, this time she's letting go of Silco, who she actually killed. It also calls back to Silco's drowning flashback from Season 1, though in this context now it could almost be seen as a flash forward. One little bubble floats up from the side of the screen to form a heart. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you know, she does love the guy like her own father. By the start of Episode 1, half of the Piltovan Council was dead, but by the start of Episode 2, half of the Zaunite Chembarons are dead, with only Smeech, Cross, and Madame Margot remaining. Alas, Riot continues to accidentally spoil their own show, as the opening song of this episode, Sucker, was posted online by Riot a couple days before the season premiere, with visuals ripped straight from this opening montage, and by extension with Finn, Silco, and Rennie progressively deleted from the picture. It accidentally confirmed that Rennie was going to die. All the Chembarons henchmen have a matching aesthetic. Only women in latex bodysuits for Margot, only men in glasses and metal jaws for Cross, and only weirdos in top hats with metal robot arms for Smeech. Even his accountant Henot has them, who by the way is voiced by the same actor who plays Heimerdinger. During the opening, Cross's men can be seen rounding up Zaunite children, including our new character Isha. This is because with Rennie dead, all that child labor she once employed is now up for grabs. Jesus Christ, that sounds so horrible to say out loud. Isha's rounded green hat with red goggles bears a slight resemblance to everyone's favorite Swift Scout from League, making for the first of 3 Teemo references in this episode alone. That is, unless you don't see a small, rambunctious, explosives-using, goggle-wearing sidekick to Jinx as a possible parallel to her old League canon friend, Ziggs. Cross is the CEO of the Hush Company, an enterprise specializing in surveillance. So to that end, you may have noticed to keep track of his near-identical henchmen, he has literally numbered them. Isha is meant to act as a stand-in for young Powder, a reflection of Jinx's past, with her falling into Jinx's lap the same way she did with Silco being our first hint. There's a Firelight sign here and a whole bunch of Firelight logos painted across this alleyway, even an arrow pointing in the direction to find them. But instead of following the Firelight path, instead Isha follows Jinx down the literal dark path. Smeech is my new favorite character in the show, and not just because he looks and talks like me if I got into vaping. Smeech's new punchers are on full display this time around, as last season they were covered up by his coat. He is also a Yordle, same species as Heimerdinger, so his tall stature is purely because of his cybernetic augmentations, although for a few instances we actually do get to see him at his more Yordle accurate height. You can tell Madame Margot owns this building because the entire entranceway is literally just modeled after her face. While we the viewer don't even know what the Grey is yet, it actually gets name dropped right here.
The Grey. All the way up here.
The gas mask Keenot wears is the exact same as the one seen in the Chem Baron meeting from season 1, potentially meaning that canister that Silco used to intimidate the Chem Barons was a canister filled with the Grey. It's ironic that Savika refuses to hand over Jinx, because in the last season she would have been one of the first ones to do so. Savika has also been shown repairing her own mechanical arm one-handed before, and now she seemingly can't. A metaphor for how now that Silco's gone, everything that he once provided is now meaningless. Look at that, Jinx doodled some of her inner demons on the ceiling. Or is that supposed to be Milo? I don't know, she draws both of them later anyway, so either works. It is heavily implied that Savika doesn't actually even know Jinx was the one who killed Silco, nor anyone else for that matter, given Smeech's surprise at the reveal. As Jinx talks about the failures of working for Silco and his plans collapsing around them, you can spot discarded and broken gadgets Jinx worked on, as well as the insignia for the Eye of Zon water tower that actually collapsed on Silco in season 1. Victor is awoken by, hears constant voices of, and repeatedly sees visions of Sky Young, the character that somehow had even less screen time than Tobias Kierman, but appears to be playing a much larger role this season. If it could only be assumed as the Hex Court self becoming sentient, it's using visions of Sky to prey upon Victor's survivor's guilt and influence his decisions. Victor has slowly started to take on traits from his League of Legends design. His blanket resembles the cloak, his crutch morphs into a staff, while subtle he now has a voice filter.
I sense a charge.
And the only part of his body that isn't magic machinery makes a near perfect outline for the mask he wears in League of Legends. New to his design though are the pulsating colored eyes and the medical harness he wore that has now been fused to his chest. Victor finds Jace's Man of Tomorrow mug sitting atop plans for Hex Tech weapons, including the Hex Tech rifle, and is a visual metaphor for the corruption of the Hex Tech dream they once shared. And along with the visions of Sky on her notebook, the pure Hex Tech dream is what persuades Victor to leave.
Goodbye. Victor, you're my partner.
These bitches gay. Good for them. Good for them.
The newbies that enter the Firelight safe haven are wearing blindfolds. Living in the depths of Zon, they aren't used to the bright light of the sun, they won't know the directions, keeping the place a secret, and potentially a method of reprieve from the effects of the Grey, as we've seen what it does to the eyes. Echo's right-hand man, Scar, is a member of the Kyrian species found in Zon, but more importantly, he gets his first actual line of dialogue beyond and is also now voiced by Robbie Damon, who League heads might recognize as the voice of Kayn. The bubble machine that Heimerdinger is building is almost a one-to-one recreation of his turrets from League of Legends, just with significantly less bullets. You can also see that Heimerdinger got his own little Firelight mask and customized it. Only a few moments later we get to see the same paintbrushes that he probably used to do so. The blue magnifying glass is a reference to the blue magnifying glass goggle attachment of Heimerdinger's League of Legends design. Poetic, there's a little painting of the sun right as it shines onto Echo, but more importantly, the totem pole in the background here looks like Kinger from the Amazing Digital Circus, and you can't unsee it either. The outside of the Academy building has statues of Piltover's founding members. Notably, we can see ones for Heimerdinger and Stanwyck Padidley, who was mentioned in Season 1.
The Brambleback has left the jungle.
Brambleback is the species name for the red buff jungle camp from League of Legends, and also Heimerdinger doesn't know how code phrases work. We know that all these dishes belong to Jace. As we've seen, he leaves the spoon in the cup after finishing. So not only has he been drinking significantly more, but he has forgone his Man of Tomorrow mug as he no longer believes in his own dream. On the walls of Zaun is the first definitive cameo of the Wind Goddess and League of Legends champion, Janna. The strength of the design isn't the League version nor the LOR one. In fact, it's closest to that of the Wild Rift version of the Tempest Janna skin. In the old days, the people of the Undercity would pray to Janna for clean air. With the reappearance of the Grey, it in turn has also caused the reemergence of the Zaunites' belief in Janna. Hey, Huck is back from Season 1, still scarred from Shimmer usage, and with a dwindling supply has resorted to mugging. That's a nice mural of hooded figures back there, something often associated with cults. I wonder if that could mean anything. This is the same arcade from Season 1, fitted with graffiti of a dead enforcer, our second Teemo cameo, Clagger's goggles, and our first glimpse at Jinx's plan scribbled out in crayon. The monstrous face seen in the gray is a purely stylistic choice, visualizing how dangerous it is, but also jabbing at how monstrous it is of our own leads to unleash this plague upon Zaun just to find one person. Even though younger people are more susceptible to the gray, Jinx has a pretty high tolerance, getting right back up again even after several minutes of exposure with no protection. Jinx can figure out that this enforcer is Vi right away. Oh, how far she's grown from Season 1. This entire scene is also a parallel to one from the first season. Enforcers raiding the same arcade in search of the culprit, Jinx, behind a recent Piltover attack. Except this time, Vi is the one actively hunting Jinx down instead of protecting her. The scene was also teased ahead of time as it was recreated for the recall animation of Caitlyn's Arcane Commander skin, only without the camera feature. Vi finds Clagger's goggles here, and we know she immediately recognizes them because she keeps them. In fact, we see her wearing them for the rest of the act. Jinx still knows how to operate her favorite game even after all these years. The color bomb thrown by Isha is Whisker, a gadget we saw Powder make in the very first episode. Yet another hint that Isha is supposed to be a mirror of young Powder. Savika prepping the attachment of her new arm shares almost the exact same camera work as when her first robot arm was revealed in Season 1. And on Savika's new arm, oh boy, well, it's made of deconstructed parts from the old boxing machine in the arcade, the one Jinx could never beat her sister in, and by dismantling it, it is not only torn down that reminder, but by making it a part of Savika, it acts as symbology for her replacing Vi as Jinx's sisterly figure in life, much like how Jinx thinks that Vi has replaced her with Caitlyn. Savika's new arm is also operated via slot machine, and there's some interesting images to be found within. There's a hammer, something that Jinx uses in the League fighting game 2XKO, a small trap, both referencing the arm itself, and Jinx's flame choppers from League, a Poro, small creatures native to the Freljord, and one of the main mascots of Riot Games, purple question marks, might be a random effect or a dose of shimmer. Turkey legs, I swear there's a scene with Savika eating a drumstick, I just can't find it. There's also a letter on each slot, P-A-K, which of course stands for Powder, Arcane, Kill! The arm also has a built-in score/combo counter and actively punishes Savika for missing her attacks. When she whiffs the grappling hook, not only does it start playing Get Jinxed automatically, something that clearly annoys her, but it causes her next spin to low roll, landing on a poison puff cap, which causes the arm to break down. It's only once she lands a successful attack with the boxing glove does she start to build up the score counter, leading to more and more powerful attacks as she keeps landing them, until eventually reaching the high score and getting the ultimate move. The shurikens have the Eye of Zaun logo on them, the blue smog is the same as Jinx's flare, and the poison puff cap is a native mushroom to Zaun, acting as our third Teemo reference in this episode. This is also the second appearance of Get Jinxed in this series, which in our world is not only Jinx's theme song, but the accompanying music video was animated by Fortiche, the same studio behind Arcane. Now, I've heard some people say that Victor is slowly turning into some Jesus-like figure, and honestly, guys, that's ridiculous. Victor only wears a giant robe, has a staff conveniently shaped like that of a shepherd, dies and comes back to life, leaves his tomb with a clear impression that he's done so, follows God's path, a guided path, sees people worshiping what he deems a false god, instantly forgives the people who tried to harm him, cures the sick of all ailments, and creates a new religion. Yeah, I don't see the parallels at all. The evolution process also didn't just rid Huck of his shimmer affliction compared to how he looked in Season 1. His hairline is back in full form, he no longer needs glasses, his wrinkles are gone, his eyes themselves are a completely different color. Overall, he might have just been de-aged entirely. There are two byproducts to this transformation, notably several streaks of white hair and metal skin on the most damaged parts of the body, that, save for their color, are almost identical to that of Victor. It's unclear how many people that Victor can cure in any given amount of time, but it's clear that it still takes an immense physical toll on him, and even though 95% of his body is a magic machine, he still isn't free from the biological curse that is sweating. Episode 2's epilogue is again accompanied by the tune of a music box, and a fun detail that we now know, the merkwolf with its double heads also has a double heart, of which is being kept alive by a giant green canister, one we see the blueprints of right below and resemble the exact same ones found on the back of the champion Warwick. I wonder what that could be.
The chains are broken. The beast is free.
Note to self, do not become attached to characters from Arcane who are not playable in League of Legends. Less than 30% chance they survive beyond 2 episodes. Now we can finally get on to episode 3.
Finally got the name right.
The people of the underground deserve to breathe.
Kind of the opposite of what Caitlyn said when talking about Jinx.
I want to tear that laugh from her throat forever.
The opening montage is a visualization of Caitlyn's plan described at the end of episode 1, locating Jinx, dismantling Shimmer, and neutralizing any agent still loyal to Silco, hence the absolute slaughter of Cross and Madame Margot's henchmen. The framing of this transition from Caitlyn's rifle to shattered glass of the Chem Barons indicates both of them are now dead, meaning Zaun is woefully Chem Baronless. Loris activates a Flame Chomper trap here, and it is the reason why he has a limp for the rest of the episode. Especially in this episode, we'll see Caitlyn's descent into becoming as much a monster as Jinx is, and Riot really wants to let you know about that. Steb, I know you already forgot his name, is the resident medic of the group. He performs the exact same checkup on Hinot here as he did with Caitlyn back in episode 1, and even in TFT, his ability heals his allies. Hinot is suffering pretty bad from the prolonged exposure to the gray, even though he wasn't fully engulfed in it, and his feverishly runny nose was listed as a side effect in the illustrations from the opening montage. Vi also recognizes him from their first encounter in the last episode.
Your speeches, man.
It should be noted as well that the purple streaks on his body are not from the gray nor Shimmer. Jinx was just purposely being careless with her spray paint. And Bessa sure does have a lot of weapons on her wall, doesn't she? I'm sure there's some references to some champions, followers, and items in there. I bet there is. Amara is revealed to be a secret agent of the Black Rose, but the purple cloak, golden neck piece, red dot on her forehead right where the red jewel of her crown would be, and being able to teleport are all signatures of the Black Rose's leader, LeBlanc. The magical red hand-shaped tendrils Amara uses bear a strange resemblance to that of the demon Fiddlesticks. Well, that's obviously not what it is. LeBlanc, and by extension the Black Rose, do have a history of imploring demons into their arsenal of magic. Rictus activates the Canic Rookins on his glaive, causing them to emanate a bright green glow, just like the runic blade of the champion Riven. Though because these runes are not actually engraved into the weapon and are just stones attached to the hilt, we even see Rictus move and adjust them, it more or less confirms this isn't an authentic runic weapon. Ambessa has yet to wield the twin Drake Hounds that she has in League of Legends, killing Amara with the exact same blade she used in Mel's flashback sequence from Season 1. As Amara dies, the red hue slowly fades from her eyes. Caitlyn and Vi do a little kiss. The kiss also acts as reassurance for Vi that Caitlyn hasn't changed like everyone else in her life. However, in the very next scene, we can see it in her eyes, she already has. If you're wondering how Vi and Kate managed to even find Jinx down here, well, you can see she left markers and literal arrows telling them where to go. Steb's fin, eyelash fins move when he blinks. I don't know if that means anything. It might just be an involuntary reflex. Counselor Sallow's full name is Sallow Weaselman. Okay, it isn't, but the guy is a massive hypocrite, using microdoses of Shimmer in what could only be assumed an attempt to heal his legs, and owning the same Zaunite brothel Kate and Vi visited in Season 1. Lest closely resembles the fox-like Vasani tribe of Vastaya, despite the fact that the League of Legends champion Ahri is supposed to be the last one. The theater housing the Demacian play is actually owned by the Medardas, as we can see their insignia above the front entrance, and is the same building that housed the performance from last season. Jarvan 4's crown is in clear view, but what's more difficult to notice is the little prop of the champion's famous extendo spear. Heimerdinger's wrench from the game also makes an appearance. And he cusses.
Oh, balls.
Janna was heavily worshipped by the people of Ashravazan before it sank underground. If any of that is still even canon, that would explain this underground temple featuring murals, engravings, and a broken statue. This mural is the exact same pose as the painting from episode 2, but the song Ashes and Blood actually has a Shuriman chant translated from an old prayer to the goddess Janna Rem, the old name for Janna. As Mel snoops over Salah's medical records, we can see a single postcard actually written in clear English. There's also engravings on the back of the walls in Mel's office, ones we get a better look at the end of the episode, and are quite similar in composition to the ones in Ambessa's bathhouse, depicting what is likely to be a Noxian onslaught. Of all the possible characters to get a cameo in this series, I bet none of you, zero of you, could have ever predicted handsome Squidward. The graffiti on these stone pillars contain drawings of pivotal moments in Jinx's life. Vi and Powder being adopted by Vander after their parents died, the monkey bomb explosion, Milo and Clagger dying, Vander dying, her inner demons, the flare and Vi's return because of the flare, her killing Silco, and one drawing that actually depicts what she's going to do using the ventilation system and the gray. You know, for being so smart, Jace should not be trusted with security anywhere. Dude, the password to get in for his backup system is just his family crest engraved into a spinning puzzle. Like, come on, man. A single purple petal falls right in front of Caitlyn as she is about to shoot Jinx. A great callback to the beginning of episode 1, and again symbolizing a part of herself, though this time she isn't just letting go of it, she is actively destroying it. One of Vi's childhood nicknames for Jinx was Pow Pow.
I know. Pow pow, I know.
Additionally, Jinx's minigun is also named Pow Pow, so you could probably piece together the symbolism of Vi ripping Pow Pow in half. When Jace touches the mutated Hex core, it causes all Hextech weaponry to glitch out, though strangely, Fishbones isn't affected until much later. You can pause at nearly any moment in this show and find a crystal clear image so good you could put on wallpaper. So it's pretty funny to see that for the glitch effect, they actually incorporated some classic 2D animation style smear frames. Caitlyn, where'd you learn that bite move? Clearly not from Isha, she actually knows how to do it properly. Remember Star Wars? Vi braces, then uses the gauntlets to propel herself forward, just like how her Q ability, Vault Breaker, works in League of Legends. Jace's flashback gets warped here with the mysterious wizard who is not Rise, having the mutated Hex core replace what would have been the Hex gem, and after smashing it, the ensuing explosion takes the form of a butterfly. See, I told you it was important.
That's how it feels!
Just in case you wanted more visual symbolism for how Violet and Powder's bond is permanently broken, here you go. In a bunch of promotional artworks for this new season, Jinx suspiciously had a robot finger in some of them, and yeah, I guess we know why now. To describe Isha in this moment would be as a scared little girl making one bold move in an attempt to save someone she loves that ends up costing her everything. And both Jinx and Vi recognize that this is the exact same thing that happened to Powder. This shot. Okay, I'm being serious. This shot. Caitlyn didn't miss. If Vi's gauntlet wasn't in the way, the bullet would have gone straight through Jinx and potentially even Isha's skull. And this is yet again, probably unintentionally, another reference to League. Caitlyn's ult is impossible to dodge, but can be blocked if someone gets in the way of the bullet. It only lasts a couple frames, but knowing what is about to happen, Jinx does roll over in a defensive curl to try and shield Isha, and continues to guard her through the wind current. And you know, a Janna mural blocking a giant wind current? Yeah, real slick. Quite a few shots we see taken during the onslaught of the Grey on Piltover are almost identical to several shots we see from the first teasers for the show and its very first episode. This child that got trapped in the Grey is the same one that we see later at Counselor Sallow's summit, continuing the trend that the younger the person is, the more susceptible they are to the Grey, with people like Silco, who grew up surrounded by the stuff, being the most tolerant to its effects. While Sallow and Mel are mortified by the attack, Mbessa seems rather calm about it and even gives the slightest hint of a smirk for a couple frames. The concrete blocking Caitlyn's way back is one of the graffiti pillars, in fact the only one that depicted Jinx as happy.
But then there's Jinx laughing.
This particular graffiti artwork is also the one with Vi's arm draped over Jinx's shoulder. As much as Vi has forgiven herself for what happened to Powder, all Caitlyn can see is that Vi is enabling her, constantly letting her get away. Jinx is still her fault.
I had the shot. I had the shot.
The ending of season 1's first act repeats itself, with one of our main sisters being abandoned by a loved one right after being physically assaulted by said loved one, while Vi's perspective fades to black.
The hole gets smaller, but you never fill it.
Hey, so remember in episode 1, the whole wind speed thing being a metaphor for Caitlyn's emotions? Remember how Vi was supposed to be her emotional rock? Allura lacks the red eyes that Amara had, and only speaks in the raspy whisper voice heard echoing over top of Amara's.
What you've stolen is more precious than any gold.
Meaning Allura is not an agent of the Black Rose or clone of LeBlanc and is rather just possessed. The Kierman household is strangely the only one in this shot not covered in paint from the attack. Counselor Sallow has upgraded himself to an electric wheelchair, so Sallow no longer needs Mbessa to push him around. And as we will soon see, Mbessa no longer needs Sallow to be pushed around. God, this show is so goddamn smart sometimes. This is also the first scene in the Counselor Hall since the start of the season, and you might notice the newly installed giant Piltover mistletoe and banners. This old lady in the background has the exact same hairstyle as the champion Camille. The houses occupying most of the screen time here are strangely all adorned with the same red and black coloring Noxus is famous for. Maddie, Steb, and Caitlyn are all technically still junior officers, so Loris being in the back and having the same physique as the senior enforcers only enforces the idea that once he held the same position. Hey, Harold's back again.
Hi there.
At first, it might seem strange that Maddie is indoctrinated so easily, but remember, she didn't witness what happened down there. She saw clear evidence that the enemy wanted her dead, and as far as she knows, Vi abandoned them. So seeing one of the few people she trusts promoted to a new seat of power that can bring down the people that want her and her friends dead, how else would she act? Unless you believe the whole theory about her being evil, I guess. These quick cuts between Caitlyn and Ambessa are meant to instill that Ambessa is trying to turn Caitlyn into the Noxian Mel never was. She wants to keep Mel safe, but she needs someone influential and powerful at her side. And through anger, she has found the perfect pawn to mold. A devil on her shoulder, if you will. With the addition of the cape, we're now only missing the Hextech railgun to complete the look of Caitlyn's Arcane Commander skin in League. The final Singe epilogue is once again accompanied by a music box, giving us a real good look at his face, showing his creepy smile is actually permanent because the chemical fire burned off most of his mouth and his lips. And lastly, this scene is practically an extended alternate perspective version of the same one we saw at the end of season 1 and is our third Warwick teaser for this season. So, I mean, you guys already know.
Give Huck the rest of what you owe him, and I'll let you walk out of here in one piece.
And there you go. That's everything that I could find, but there's no doubt in my mind that there are plenty that I missed. So if there's any that you caught but didn't see in this video, be sure to tell me down in the comments below. And just go watch the show, okay? It's really good, really well made, worth the actual amount of money they put into it. And hopefully I'll see you fellas for the next video and, you know, go watch Act 2 or something.